Transgenderism is a controversial subject, but it doesn't have to be. Anyone can understand it by simply observing the natural world and humanity's place in it. If an alien race was cataloging the various species on Earth, and for whatever reason did humans last, maybe because the alien word for human comes alphabetically near the end in the alien dictionary, those aliens would be expecting transgenderism in people. Accepting transgenderism is a simple exercise in logic for anyone who doesn't allow prejudice to cloud their views by also accepting two basic caveats. Caveat 1. Religion cannot be used as an argument. Science. Science never changes. This may sound like a ridiculous statement considering history is filled with examples of just that. After all, science once said the sun revolved around the earth. Science once said that bathing was detrimental to good health. Science once said that shoving mercury into your genitals cured STDs. Science even once said that M. Night Shyamalan was a good director. What I mean by science never changes is that the laws of the physical universe never change. Admittedly, what does change is our ability to measure the effects of those laws and our interpretation of the data. Science is not only open to interpretation, but debating the results of the data and its implications for our lives is encouraged. In fact, this debate is a core tenet in the scientific method, that all results are subject to review and evaluation, but the actual physical laws themselves do not change. Science encourages debate, unlike religion, where emotions and belief outweigh any evidence to the contrary. Religion always changes. For example, any Christian who clings to the idea that the Bible is the intransigent Word of God has clearly never done a Google search for a Bible verse. Not only are there any number of translations based on language, there are often several different versions of the Bible per language. On one biblical verse database, there are over 50 translations in English alone. That's not even getting into the various revisions throughout the religion's history when the book was altered to fit the expectations of whoever was pope or king at the time. There's even been a push in recent years in the United States to create a version of the Bible that is more in line with modern conservative views because apparently traditional Jesus is a little too nice for some people. Since religion depends upon one's personal beliefs, whereas science is based on repeatable observations of the physical world, religion has no part to play in rational debate. Caveat 2. Human beings are part of the natural universe and not an impartial, unrelated third party. Humans are arrogant. Obviously, specific humans are incredibly full of themselves, but even as a species, we think a little too highly of our place in the universe. We reached the top of the food chain eons ago, and frankly, it's gone to our head. We tend to think of ourselves as separate from nature, that the world is comprised of plants and animals here solely to be used as food, resources, and entertainment, and that human beings are far, far above them. We enjoy watching animals in zoos, but what we usually find most amusing is when they exhibit behavior that mimics our own. We laugh because, ooh, they think they're people. Yet seldom do we take a moment to appreciate the times when our behavior mirrors what we see in the animal kingdom. We can be just as violent as a cheetah taking down a gazelle. We can be just as caring as a gorilla cradling its young. We can be just as frightened as a mouse running from a predator. We can be just as curious as a bird discovering something new in its environment. We can be just as horny and uncaring as a male cat mounting a mate who is clearly not that into it. Humans refer to this behavior in the animal kingdom as simple acts of instinct, while often arrogantly finding complex reasons for that exact same behavior in our own lives. Animals do it because they can't help it. Humans do it for sport, or love, or common sense, or intellectual curiosity, or simply being a douchebag. Humans are merely another species on Earth, and regardless of intelligence, are subject to the same rules of observation as any other organic life on the planet. The capacity for complex reasoning cannot be used as an excuse to disregard traits or behavior that are often identical to so-called lower life forms. We are not as special as we like to believe. Accepting these two caveats is crucial because when arguing logically why transgenderism should be treated as much an acceptable physical trait in humanity, like eye color or whether one can roll his tongue, and not at best confused behavior, and at worst a mental illness, one has to accept that human beings are subject to the same conditions as all life on Earth. We need to treat ourselves like zoologists do any other animal, with observation and comparison, by observing human traits and behavior and comparing them to what we know about other animals to draw logical conclusions. Consider the concept of intersex organisms, what were once called hermaphrodites, a term that has fallen out of favor in recent years due to the negative ramifications of the word. At the most basic level, intersex animals exhibit both male and female characteristics or are able to change sex under certain conditions. In fact, all mammals essentially do the latter during gestation. They initially develop as female, or to put it more accurately, they lack any of the male characteristics until a crucial part of development when hormones get released at just the right moment to lock in the gender. Intersex can even include breeding, where it doesn't matter which partner is the traditional male or female. In the animal kingdom, female lions have been observed with manes. Female spotted hyenas grow labia that resemble male genitalia, and just last year, an ostensibly male shark was caught by fishermen who discovered both male and female reproductive systems after cutting it open. While these finds are rare, perhaps we'd see more of them if there wasn't a language barrier between humans and almost all other animal species. Who can say that if they were capable of it, animals wouldn't have come up with their own version of RuPaul's Drag Race? At the genetic level, it's believed that lions and humans share about 85% of the same DNA. Hyenas are closely related to cats, which share about 90% of the same DNA with humans. Researchers have discovered that sharks share over 150 of the same genes with us, as well as certain physiological and biochemical processes, including sex. Each of these three wildly varying species share the traditional reproductive methods, so it's extremely probable that the blueprints for sexuality must be included in all those shared genes. And since each of these creatures has been observed with intersex individuals, it stands to reason whatever made them intersex is also contained in those same shared genetics, as much as how each developed eyes, ears, noses, and other obvious common characteristics. Human beings have occasionally been born with somewhat atypical sexual organs, and sometimes even both of them. Science is unsure of how or why this happens, but as sex changes during gestation, it's pretty clear intersex occurs because something doesn't go quite right during that stage of development. Unfortunately, as intersex has not been well understood over the years, and worse, intersex individuals have been subject to societal discrimination, doctors often took the liberty of guessing which sex the newborn would favor and cut off the opposite organ, essentially maiming the child. Often, this would result in those unfortunate individuals being miserable because they went through life with their internal wiring telling them they were one sex, while their exterior physical attributes told the world a different story. Some transgender people have described themselves as being born one gender, but with a body that just happens to have an unnecessary part growing where a different one was supposed to. This sounds suspiciously like children born with both sexual organs, but the wrong one was removed at birth. In other words, transsexual people may have essentially been born intersex, but instead of being maimed by a clueless doctor, their own bodies sabotaged them by not getting around to developing the part they needed. Genitals, however, are not the end-all and be-all of sexuality. Many men have had their penises removed by accident or war, and the wiring in their bodies didn't immediately tell them to start behaving like the opposite sex by enjoying the view and getting paid 30% less than they used to. When women go through menopause, get a hysterectomy, or lose their breasts to cancer, many understandably feel they lost a significant part of their womanhood, but they don't start suddenly behaving like men by blowing their noses in their hands or farting in their friends' faces. Clearly, genitals do not always dictate gender. In fact, these situations clearly de-emphasize the role genitals have in whether we feel more comfortable sitting down or standing up to pee. So now that it's been established that people are sometimes born with both sexual organs, as well as that the brain's wiring for gender is not inexorably linked to whatever is, or isn't, between one's legs, we must accept that some are born with internal physiology indicating one gender, but with external characteristics showing another. It's impossible to be more succinct.
That's impossible!
Humans can be born with both sex organs. Human gender is not defined by what's between the legs. Humans can be born with exterior gender traits that don't match the interior. The very fact that the human body comes in so many varied sizes, shapes, and mutations, it's obvious that transgenderism is just another aspect of humanity, as valid as having brown hair or slightly webbed feet. Discriminating against people wanting to use the bathroom that matches the gender they feel inside is just as stupid as accusing left-handed people of witchcraft. Sure, maybe some people are just crazy. Lots of human beings are crazy, and certainly there has to be a few people out there with legitimate mental issues where they aren't actually transgender, but for whatever reason think they are. But saying all, or even some transgender people aren't truly transgender is like claiming everyone with a nut allergy just thinks they're allergic because so many were bullied by Mr. Peanut in high school. It's not up to us to decide someone's gender because of what they look like at a glance. That's like keying someone's car because they parked in a handicap spot and you saw them easily walk the 10 feet to the store's entrance. Little did you know they happen to have MS, and today was one of their few good days, which could come to a crashing end before they make it to checkout and they need their vehicle close just in case. Perhaps in the future, medical science will be able to screen gender as easily as reading cholesterol levels. It's possible that at some point in the future, you'll be sitting in a doctor's office going over tests and suddenly learn you've been living as the wrong gender all your life. And that's why you're so good at picking the underwear out of your butt crack, or why you've always secretly liked The View.